Hello everyone, John here, your host on the Prepared Mind channel. You got me at work again. Taking my break. Long days, a lot of extra responsibilities. I guess we all have to make a living. But there's no way I can make it through a day without having to hear from a number of people about what is going on this planet. One of the big things that's bugging the living shit out of people right now is this right here. It is. Right? Now I'm in here early today, by the way. It is House Resolution 5087. Right? It is the assault weapons ban of 2018. What, people, we want to know what I think of this? I probably, at home, which is where I had this, spent $1 on paper and another $1 on ink. This is 67 pages of crap, right? This doesn't even qualify as toilet paper. Why? Because I would not wipe my ass with it. I wouldn't want the ink on this in its current configuration to touch my rectum, right? And speaking of rectum, right? This is an expose of communist, socialistic, fascist bilge. It's crap. And here's the thing. If a communist saw this, they would say, that's good stuff. We like that. Because they don't want people to be able to protect themselves. They don't want people to be able to have the power to overthrow a corrupt communist government. Now, if a fascist, say a Nazi, or some other social fascist, like a globalist, for example, if they saw this, they would say, hey, that's good stuff. We like that. Why? Because it takes away the people's right to defend themselves or overthrow a despotic government. Whether that regime is a globalist Nazi fascist organization or a globalist communist socialist organization. Either way, this is complete crap. This is unconstitutional. There is nothing in here, right, that even has a whiff that resembles some sort of proper authority. It's a waste of effort and money, except I wanted to show you guys the thickness of that. Well, when fully compressed, it's about 3/8 of an inch thick, on this particular paper. Now, what's interesting is 67 pages. You would think there's an awful lot of writing in there, but it's actually not. About 4/5 of it is a list of guns, right, by manufacturer, by model. Now, this is called the assault weapons ban, but guess what? It's not about assault weapons. This is extremely critical to understand. They overplayed their hand. This was pre-prepared prior to the shooting in Parkland, Florida. I'm going to get a sip of coffee before I tell you this one. Sit down, buckle your seatbelts in, and hold the fuck on. This was made and written before. Now, all too often, legislators will come out after a tragedy and go, we've got a solution for this. We think HR5087 needs to be done. You see, there's no way in hell that, let's say, Dianne Feinstein could go to her staff in her office and go, oh my God, you wouldn't believe what just happened in Florida. Quick, sit down, write some really good legislation so that we don't have this problem again. And then we're going to run to the nearest podium, right, after you've assembled all of this, and we're going to try and get the American people to swallow it because they're in a state of confusion and they're upset emotionally. That's the type of fucking mentality they have, except they didn't wait until after the shooting to do this. Do you think some congressional staffer could pull out their ass 45 pages of guns let me just try this with you, right? It's not like this is just a few guns. They've got the Savage, they've got the Tikka, they've got the Ultralight, they've got Weatherby, Harrington, Desert Industries. They've got every one known to man. You know what else I saw in here? This is going to correct you. Well, I'm skipping ahead. Let me get back. It would take days to research all of these firearms to put in here in the list. They have overshot their wad. Now what's interesting is when the story broke, when they ran to the microphones, when grown men cried instead of intelligently thinking, when everyone got emotional, when they exploited children and the tragedy around children, then used children as spokesmen for gun control. It told me that it is well planned, it's orchestrated. This is a huge, massive push. Right? There is no doubt about it. It's a huge, massive push. And where are they going with it? Where are they going with it? They're coming right at us. They call this the assault weapons ban of 2018. This is not an assault weapons ban. This talks about high-capacity magazines and pistol grips and everything that they don't like, right? Anything that makes a weapon look like an assault weapon, right? It's not an. They could call this colon cleansing act of 2018 and then have all these guns listed in here. It doesn't matter what they title it. They really could. They could call it proctological examination legislation 2018 and have it be about your guns. They could call this the domestic oil reduction consumption program supercalifragilistic legislation and have all the same exact words in it. It doesn't matter what they call it. What matters is what's in it. This is incredibly unconstitutional. It just is. But they don't just have assault weapons in there. They don't just have high-capacity magazines. They list in their centerfire rifles. They list in their shotguns. They list in there, as a weapon, the Sharps. You're going, John, what's a Sharps? Well, if you saw the movie with Tom Selleck called Quigley Down Under, it's like a 30-year-old movie. In that, and it's a Western, it's about Quigley, Matthew Quigley. He goes from America in the Old West down to Australia to help them out with a reputable problem there, right? So he shows up and he's got a Sharps. It's like a 150-year-old gun. Sharps is considered, under this, illegal. It's an assault weapon. Shotguns, turkey guns, goose guns, rabbit guns, bolt actions, Marlins, for God's sake, Navy arms, New England Firearms Sportster single-shot rifles. How is that an assault rifle? Like I said, they've got about 45 pages. Mossberg model ATS turkey waterfowl. I've never heard of this one. What the hell is a Lorona supermodel over-under? Oh, it's a shotgun. Trap guns, you know, skeet guns. They say that, oh, well, we're only taking, this is the old bilge. We're only going to get the dangerous semi-automatic assault weapons off. You can still have your shotguns. You can still go down and shoot skeet and, you know, everything else. They try and say, well, we're letting you do all these other things. No, you're not. You're not letting us do anything, Feinstein. The only thing that would happen if you signed this and we turned our guns in is we would be letting you have our rights. I think I've said it enough. That, you know, my cold dead fingers. You know, that's not a threat. It's just the American mentality. And moreover, it's the proper, authentic, and I think I'll go so far as to say it is the sovereign individual's right to have a weapon. Right? When the government cannot take it away from you, that means the government does not have authority. That means you have the authority. You. And when you have the authority and the government doesn't, that makes you sovereign in that instance. Not sovereign over other people, just sovereign over yourself. See, this isn't about all Americans. This is about you, right here. This is about you and taking guns from you as an individual. You have to individually comply with this in order for this to have effect. And that's true of any law. It's your individuality that you have to give up in order for this to have effect. What happened back in 1776 and the few years prior to it is Americans said, you know, we don't like you, Mr. King of England. You are overstepping your authority as king, as sovereign. You're overstepping your authority. Right? They recognized King George as King George. They just said, no more of your shit. You've done enough. You're taking too much. Right? You're violating our natural rights. That's exactly what this is. It's unconstitutional when you weigh it against the paper of the Constitution. This is unconstitutional on a personal basis. It's anti-Declaration of Independence. Now, I don't think that they talk about that, and that's something I wanted to bring up here also. As we talk about something, whether it's constitutional or unconstitutional, whether it infringes or not, how about this concept, this piece of paper? It's incredibly famous. It's called the Declaration of Independence. It's where the people of the American colonies laid out a list of grievances against the King of England and said, we are now separating ourselves from you. This right here, all by itself, constitutes an aggressive use of authority that is despotic. Right? I go the other way. I go, you know what? We should be able to have, without having to get a license or permission, we should be able to have fully automatic weapons of a military grade that can fire belt-fed or high-capacity magazines. And no limitation on caliber, up to 50 caliber, 20 millimeter, 30 millimeter. We ought to be able to have anti-aircraft if we can afford that kind of weaponry. Why? Because when you're that wealthy, you should also have the responsibility. Now, back during the Revolution, let's go back in time again, through the time machine. Those men had cannon, as well as powder and fuse and ball. Right? They had the best rifles and muskets, smoothbore and rifle barrel, that were available at the time. In other words, the individual man had the opportunity to buy, possess, bear, fire the best weapons known to man at the time. You think they looked at their rifles and their muskets as pieces of shit? No, they're valuable, highly prized. That was the weapon to have, and it was useful for hunting, self-defense, and national defense, or state defense, in defense of the state. Because every man back then knew that if they were invaded by a foreign country, that they were required to protect themselves, their family, and the state. Otherwise, they would lose. So there was just a known requirement. When you're invaded, you go fight. In order to fight, you have to have the right kind of weapon, right? The best weapon. This right here, they're going back in time. They want your ARs, right? They want your AKs. They want everything. They even go back and they take lever actions, shotguns, and the single-shot sharps. They're taking us back to 1776 with this. Well, that's what they had then, so that should be good enough now. I tell you what, a revolution could be successful using those weapons. Using single-shot muskets, yeah. Yeah, the American people could overthrow a despotic government. It would be a bloody mess, right? Because so many people would die in the effort. The cool thing about having a semi-automatic weapon is it allows you to be a more effective defender of the Constitution. So when you look at this, this isn't pro-Constitution, this is pro-big government. When you read this shit, you can see what their intent is. You can see what it is they want, what they're trying to do. And they put their names on this, right? Ms. Brownlee of California. I don't know who that is, right? I'm from California, I have no idea. They got a bunch of names on here. It doesn't always say where they're from. Mr. Huffman, blah, blah, blah. All of these people, I know what they are. They're a bunch of socialists. Ms. Maxine Waters of California. One of the stupidest people I've ever heard speak in my life. You know, there's one thing that's really wonderful about being an American, is you can think how you want, whether or not it's popular. And you can say what you want, whether or not it's popular. Neither of them can be restricted. Neither of them can be criminalized. Right? In order for there to be a crime, there has to be an injured party. And not some, oh, he triggered me, right? That's not being injured. Injured. Right? So yelling fire in a crowded room can cause injury, hence it's a crime. Unless there's really a fire. In the case of this represents fire. It needs to be burned, for one. But you could call it, instead of like a flaming fire, this is a volley. It is a shot. Once more. Fire! They fired their guns at us. And this is the best they've got. This tells me, going back to that terrible day when all those children were being killed in Florida, while cops stood around and did nothing, knowing it was happening. While the FBI did nothing, having received reports ahead of time that there was a problem. Never forget that. Cops stood around and did nothing while children were killed so that politicians could bring this out. Sheriff Israel is a hack. He should be locked up because he participated in this. Right? Now, there's a rule about crime. There is something called accessory to crime, before the fact and after the fact. If he was an accessory before the fact, he is more guilty, or guilty of a greater crime. If he came in and supported this type of shit after the fact, it is also, as far as I'm concerned, a criminal offense. See, as a free, independent citizen, member of the United States of America, I can say and do what I want. I do not have the power or authority to try and overrun the Constitution, so I have free speech. I can say what I want. Under the guise of free speech, people who do have the power put this type of shit out. I think that if you put your name on something like this, that is so flagrant, it's not just questionable to its constitutionality, it is unquestionably unconstitutional. As such, it is a flagrant attempt to overturn the Constitution, the law of the land, which was established after the Revolutionary War, after the Declaration of Independence, after it was well understood that we have rights, not privileges, rights. Now, I understand, I really do, that back in, was it 1932, we had the state of economic emergency declared, and we've been operating under, since then, public policy and not law, and that the Constitution is law and the policy is not. Still, policy, police. We are in a police state and have been since 1932. I get all of the legal, super technical shit. When it happened, when it changed, when the country was taken from us. I know the Act of 1871. I get it. But that's the problem that the people in D.C. have, is Americans still think our Constitution matters. We still have it in our heads that it applies 100%. And that the government has to play along with this charade while they incrementally try and take down the Second Amendment, the First Amendment, the Fourth and the Fifth, not to mention the Third. You know what? I really believe that if the government could, they would put a policeman in every house to keep an eye on everybody. Oh, wait a moment. They don't have to do that. Why? Because now they have your phone so that they can listen in on that, right? Both the camera and the speaker records. Both the camera and the speaker can broadcast without your permission. Your phones, your iPads, your iPods, your computers. Soon it'll be refrigerators, televisions. Everything is keeping an eye on you. Very Orwellian, very 1984. They don't actually need a policeman in every house. However, I think the lawsuit should be forthcoming. If there were good creative lawyers and they're very creative when they want to come and get your money. They should be able to say that while quartering of soldiers in houses is about something that used to happen in the old days, right? But it was about police state way back in the 1700s. The king using his troops, making people pay to house them, and then those troops would keep those people in line. That it's a violation of that article because having devices, surveillance devices, is the equivalent of quartering soldiers in modern parlance. Because it's surveillance and it's chilling to free thought and free speech and freedom of motion and everything else. Because people know. They know we're being surveilled. We know it. You know, and what do I say? You know, I don't give a fuck because I'm not doing anything illegal. I'm not seditious. I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm violating no one's rights. I'm not violating any laws. I'm a free man. You're a free person. But still they're surveilling us. Still they're trying to take our guns from us. Why? Why do they want that? Let's take a look at the why, which is very important. The why is that they want to take totalitarian control of you. And they can't do it. They recognize that it's not assault weapons that are the problem. They recognize it's your belief in your rights that's the problem. So they're going to take away your rights and convince you to agree to it with this type of shit. This was an all-out assault on us because they're coming after the shotguns and the single-shot rifles. Guns that are over 100 years old. That technology they want out because they know even it is effective in stopping a tyrannical government. Let me say that again. Even those shotguns, your granddaddy's turkey gun, is an effective means of self-defense against a tyrant. It's not assault weapons that's the problem. That just makes it scary. That gives it a cool title. And they use all that emotion and all that bullshit. That's what it is. It's bullshit. Because of that Parkland shooting, to emotionally persuade people while exploiting children and speaking political, socialist, communist, Marxist bilge at you to convince you to give up your rights. And people think, oh, it's just an assault rifle ban. Oh, really? Right? You come through here and you read all of this. Oh, well, sure, yeah, the Boswell sidelock model. What the fuck is that? 45 pages of guns listed by manufacturer? They're here to clean us out. That's why they pushed so hard. They had the event. They used the police. They used children. They used their political posturing. They used commercials on TV. They used billboards. They used kids laying on the grass pretending to be dead at the White House. Some jackass sawed his AR in half. Probably wasn't even his. Right? Some jackass shot himself in the head in front of the White House. Why? To convince you to give up your rights. See, they can't take them. They have to convince you to give them up. Call your congressman. In the House of Representatives, in the Senate. I'm not going to bother with mine because they're fucking idiots. Right? Feinstein and Boxer, yeah, they're going to listen to me. My congressman, sure. I already know where he stands. This fight is in Congress. And they'll say, well, you know, Congress passed it and they represent the people. So they speak for the people. Are you fucking kidding me? They speak for the people? Really? Really? Every year I say, why don't you go ahead and spend an extra $1 trillion you don't have? And then sign my name to it. They don't fucking listen to me. They don't represent me. But they vote and it has some weight of law. Right? They're asking for a revolution, in other words. We as Americans need to understand. And we've been very good at keeping our temper. Keeping a clear head about this. understanding there's a political process to go to or go through. And that's what's going on, and we need to stop it by calling your congressman and saying, you cannot do this. Who cares what Trump says? It's if Congress passes this shit. And they won't. And that's the important thing to note. Is guess what? It did not have the effect that it wanted. Much like the King of England drawing and quartering William Wallace of Scotland, and then distributing his body parts throughout the kingdom as an example to the people that this is what would happen to them if they decided to revolt. Doing this is not going to have the effect that they hoped. If this passed, it would not have the effect that they hoped. But the effect they hoped for was people just completely willing to give up their guns. It's worked in other countries, by the way. Oh yeah. England, Australia, and Canada have much weaker protections against abusive government, meaning they don't have the guns that we have. They have some. You know, there's a lot of misunderstanding about who has what and why. Right? Just like people think here in California, we don't have guns. Well, guess what? We have ARs, and we all have concealed weapons permits if we want. In fact, the California legislature made a mistake and said no more open carry. And since we have a right to protect ourselves, see McDonald versus U.S., since we have a right to protect ourselves, they have to issue a concealed weapons permit now, unless they can find a reason to say no, which requires you to be a criminal. So that's pretty interesting, huh? By taking away open carry, they required themselves to give us some means, and it's funny as hell, right? So now everyone can get a concealed weapons permit. Everyone. Funny as fuck. So by doing this, which is clearly unconstitutional, the American attention span, I'm just going to call it that. The attention span of Americans is about this long for the average American. It's this long, and we're now this far into this shooting and the attempt to emotionally persuade us to abandon our liberties voluntarily. People have moved on. They're tired of hearing about this. QAnon says there's going to be more shootings and points to Texas. There's going to be more shootings. They're going to keep pushing for this. It's going to reach a loud crescendo, right? As preppers, we need to understand that the American people, as asleep and as stupid as they are not falling for this, and that's a good sign. But as preppers, we need to understand this is a sign. It's indicative that there's greater problems in the country. Do not give up your weapons. They are yours. They are yours by right, and they're yours because you fucking paid for them. And you're going to need them. As surely as you're going to need food and water, shelter, clothing, medicine, you're going to need that means of self-defense. You're going to need a plan. Right? So I'm not telling you, go out and buy 50 ARs. You're only going to be able to hold one at a time. Unless you're Rambo. Right? Having a good sidearm, having a good shotgun, having a good rifle. Whatever your preference is. Right? And if shit hits the fan and we go Captain Caveman, Mad Max, it's on Armageddon, guess what? There's going to be plenty of weapons laying on the ground that people are going to be prying out of other people's cold, dead fingers. Right? If I had any recommendation at this point, I'm assuming you're already a prepper. I'm assuming you already have weapons. I'm going to assume that you have ammunition, but I'm going to recommend you have adequate ammunition. What good is a weapon without ammunition? Ammo, right? Bullets. What good is a weapon without ammunition? And what good is ammunition without a weapon? We need them both. So the Second Amendment applies to ammunition as well. And prepping, it applies to ammunition. Make sure you have adequate supplies for whatever time frame you think we're going to need them. Remember, they can always be sold later. Right? They're always going to be useful. So it's not like you're pissing your money away as you would for, say, a term life insurance program or health insurance that you don't use that gets reset every year, or auto insurance, right, that if you use it, your payments go up. And insurance, that seems to be a fucking scam. It should be the assault insurance ban of 2018. It should completely get rid of Obamacare, not just get rid of the penalty part. The penalty part was great to get rid of, but they could always reinstitute it. The entire bit of legislation without a penalty isn't truly a mandate. So, anyways, what I want to do is I want to wish you all a great day, and thank you for watching. I'm now going to head into work early this morning. Got my cup of coffee here, second one today. Remember that chance favors the prepared mind. Is yours. Don't worry about this shit. Do something about this shit. It's unconstitutional. Do not agree to it. You guys be cool, Semper Fi, Godspeed to all, and I'll talk to you again soon. Remember to check out the club every couple of days. We're always adding new items and features. Along with the shop section, you can read the blog, visit the forum, and hang out at the live chat. It's a great place to be when you're a prepper.